streaming out over the internet. So welcome again on this second day of the Weather and Climate Summit out here at Breckenridge. I'm Dave Jones, one of the organizers of the Weather and Climate Summit, and we're going to get started with the morning weather briefing with Dale Eck, who's the director of the Global Forecast Center there. And for those of you online viewers who haven't seen a little bit of background on Dale, we're going to go ahead and roll this video, and then Dale will start out with the weather briefing for today.
I'm Dale Eck. I'm the director of our Global Forecast Center here at the Weather Channel. I've been here 25 years. I started out as an on-camera meteorologist coming out of Penn State University with my bachelor's degree. And I've seen a lot of extreme weather over the past 25 years. What got me into meteorology, I love snow, but through the years I've seen plenty of severe weather outbreaks, flooding events, as well as hurricanes, and all of those weather phenomena really grab my interest, including the extremes in temperature as well. This week, I'm going to be leading each day by giving a weather briefing so all of us can interact on what weather we expect over the next several days, out to 10 days, and how the weather might affect us here in Breckenridge, Colorado, and I hope it is plenty of snow.
I'm Dr. Greg Forbes. I've been severe weather expert here at the Weather Channel now for more than 12 years, but I've known Dale Eck longer than that. I was on the faculty at Penn State Department of Meteorology previously. He was a student of mine, an excellent forecaster then, an excellent forecaster now. In fact, he heads up our Global Forecast Center. That's the group of meteorologists behind the scenes that use computers and then their experience to mold our forecasts that you see on weather.com and on the air. So we're glad to have him at the Weather Channel, and we're glad to have him here.
Most notable things that took place in the last 24 hours, we talked about Midland. I think our forecast was 5 to 8 inches of snow. They ended up getting 10.6, which is a 24-hour snowfall record for them. And for a lot of people in the country wondering where the heck is the snow, it's here in West Texas. They've already had 19.5 inches. Their average for the year is 4.5. So them and parts of New Mexico have had a fair amount of snow this year. They're about the only ones that have really been beneficiaries. Just to kind of contrast that, Buffalo's only had 5.5 inches of snow so far this year. So it shows what's going on, some topsy-turvy stuff. One of the other notables, severe weather, and it was mainly happening yesterday early morning when we were having our first session. Some severe storms hitting the Houston area, 6 reports of some wind damage and 1 tornado. So after that, really didn't do much. There was a few more warnings, but then it turned into more of a heavy rain producer. Some areas having 4 and 5 inches. Understand that Houston had some pretty serious flooding yesterday morning from this system. Temperature-wise, there's your highs for yesterday. It's hard to find readings below the freezing mark, except if you get up in elevation. And northern New England, they had some 21 up in Caribou. Here's a look at our current readings this morning. Again, you know, for this time of year, it's not all that impressive at all. Radiated in the Intermountain region where we've got some teens and probably some single digits, but much of the rest of the country, especially the southeast, 70 degrees this morning in New Orleans, and that could set the stage for some more severe weather for today, as we're expecting highs close to 80 in Florida, and with the clouds and rain still to get 61 in Charlotte, 63 in Atlanta, and 71 in New Orleans. Pretty warm. Look at the northern plains too. Rapid City up to 52, even up to Bismarck. Minneapolis in the 40s, and that's what it's been like most of this winter. And those temperatures, as you can see, the departures from average, just under the upper level low down in West Texas, or Central Texas is where temperatures will be a little below average, but most of the country continues to be warm. Main weather features as we go on through today, we're going to track this low. We'll bring a lot of rain, some severe weather as it tracks northeast, severe weather south of the warm front. And there is a bit of a weak front that's coming in, dropping down through the northern Rockies. And that may bring a little bit of snow here tomorrow. I'm not really all that impressed with the amount of snow we're going to get. Just looking, here's the cells outlook for today. Slight risk from near Memphis through Mississippi and Alabama into the panhandle of Florida. 15% chance of wind damage in the area, hail similar, and they are forecasting a 5% chance for tornadoes. Dr. Forbes, if you remember yesterday, cells had their risk down in here, and he said, oh, that's going to go all the way up into northern Alabama, northern Mississippi. So they have upgraded their outlook to come in line with what Dr. Forbes was thinking. The other side of the story will be the rain, looking at HPC, thinking that with the moisture coming in and the little bit of orographic lifting, southern Appalachians could be looking at 3 to 4 inches of rain there, but a pretty large area of mainly 1 inch to 2 inches of rain. So that's going to be the big story as that system moves northeast over the next couple of days. The one dropping down from the north, this is a look at the snowfall forecast. You're mainly looking at 1 to 2 inches, maybe a little bit more at some of the higher elevations. That's the forecast. And then going ahead to Thursday into Friday, as the cold air comes in behind that storm, the storm will be a wet storm, but as it hits some colder air in northern New England, and then the lake effect as it's pretty cold behind it, this is the probabilities of 4 inches or more of snow. So that's probably going to be our only snow we're going to talk about for the next several days outside of the Rockies. So let me go ahead and get into kind of start out here with just wanted to real quickly show here, start out here. This is a look at the rainfall. I said that was the other story. So a little bit of severe weather around Houston, but a pretty good area of up to 1 to 3 inches of rain, locally 4 or more inches. So that was the big story with this system, and it will continue to be as take a look at radar here. Pull this down a little bit. So there's your front across the northern Rockies. Again, it's not bringing a lot of Pacific moisture as it's dropping north to south. So there'll be some snow as it moves southward. And again, it looks like tomorrow our best chance to get a little bit of snow from that. You can see the spin around the upper level low here, and then that storm is going to be tracking to the east-northeast. And as it does, it's going to be detached from the cold air, so it's mainly going to be producing rain. You can see the spin on the satellite with that low, the moisture coming up. When you see this, I don't know, Dr. Forbes, sometimes that robs a little, sorry, it updated, robs a little bit of the moisture farther north when you get the Gulf Coast thing going. So that may keep the severe down here, but still there is the potential in the warm sector here to get some severe. And then there's your frontal boundary, as you can see, not looking all that impressive in terms of what it might bring in terms of snow. Going to show you, this is the latest GFS model from 6Z this morning. And the main feature, again, is the low pressure. It's going to be tracking northeast. And as it does, by the time we get to this evening, looks like rainy time of it from Little Rock to Memphis, and then the showers and storms, Jackson, Mississippi, down to the panhandle of Florida. And then there's our system coming through the northern Rockies with a few inches of snow as it works its way south, and that's coming in with this next shot of some cold air that's coming in. Probably going to take temperatures back to near normal, not a real strong Arctic shot, but we may see one bigger next week, so I'll show you that in just a little bit. But in the meantime, as we go on through Wednesday, rain spreading up through St. Louis will be on the northern edge of it, Paducah, Nashville, Charlotte, Atlanta getting rain as we head on into Wednesday, and then it heads up into the mid-Atlantic region, so D.C., through Pennsylvania, and then up into New York City as we head on into Wednesday night. And again, you can see there's your critical thickness. The storm is just detached from the cold air. But behind this system, with that system dropping through the Rockies, we will get a pretty good shot of some cold air. And again, it's getting it back to average or a little below. It's really not a core of the Arctic air coming in to the U.S. And of course, with that and the cyclonic flow, you'll have some lake effect that we showed just a little while ago. As we go on in, this is Thursday, rain, and then eventually in northern New England, kind of the cold air is getting a little tougher, maybe some ice and snow, Vermont, New Hampshire, and up on into Maine with the system. Pretty good shot, windy, cold. It's going to feel like winter, but when you really look at the averages, it's not really going to be all that cold, but definitely will feel different than what it feels like today in those areas where temperatures are going to be up in the 40s and 50s. And some Appalachian snow. This will help a little bit for some of the ski resorts in the east. And again, some lake effect, some pretty good cyclonic flow here, some cold air, definitely cold enough. Lake effect will be a little bit of a story. But the system's going to keep moving, so it really doesn't have the time to do major kind of damage. And then behind that, by the time we get to the weekend, much of the country is dominated by high pressure after the cold shot for the end of the week. The cold air starts to relax a little bit, but we'll be watching this next system because that may be bringing, start to bring some more Arctic air into the country. So through the weekend and early next week, it looks relatively quiet. We'll get another warm up in the plains, but more Arctic air is building here. Alaska's been having a real winter, and some of that air is going to start to get closer at least to the northern border. I'll show the 850s in just a little bit. But once we get rid of this system and the cold shot behind it, looks quiet for the weekend into the first part of next week, but then we do start to see some of that pretty cold, low thickness is coming in, Arctic high pressure coming in from Alaska. That's been where the cold air has been. So we do look for, at least this is on the GFS, showing a pretty good shot, at least in the northern tier of the country. So at least we got some cold air that's close by, and we're still going to be watching with this general trough in the middle of the country, and there's a low trying to form. The GFS model had a low over the weekend in the southern plains, so not putting a lot of certainty on where that low or when a low may form, but the fact that you have some cold air now in the lower 48 in the northern plains, maybe we'll finally start to get some winter out of that. And then a pretty good system by Tuesday coming into the northwest, and that area as well has been pretty dry, as Matt can attest to. Seattle down to Portland, a very dry December, and things haven't changed much as we've turned the calendar year. I wanted to show real quick, just to talk, I was talking about the cold air. Here's a look. I just called up the European 850s as we go on through. So, it's mild right now. And then as we head through the next couple of days, we do see this cold air coming down. But even the -20 air is staying well north of the U.S. border. So by, January standards, this is nothing all that tremendous in the way of cold. But for, Chicago, Minneapolis, down through Nashville, even Atlanta, the east, it's going to be a return to some winter temperatures as we head on through the weekend. And then let me pull this up because it's got the. But then watching, you can see that cold air up there in Alaska and up in the Yukon. And as we're going ahead in time, as we move on into next week, starting to see some of that true Arctic air, that -30 air, starting to expand. So this is something we haven't seen much of this winter. All of Canada well below freezing, and something we're going to have to monitor. None of the models are plunging this in, but the fact that we're getting a buildup of cold air in Canada, and it's right there across the border, and by the time we get out to later in the middle of next week, we start to see some of that Arctic air, some -30 air, getting into the Dakotas, Minnesota, and eventually toward the lakes. And so with it being closer, and then we get some of those storms around the trough in the center part of the country, maybe things could get a little more interesting as we head through next week for the country that hasn't seen much of a winter. All right. Any questions? Anything I missed? Yes? There's been cold in Europe. There's also it's mainly been locked up in Alaska and up into James Bay, and there's been this zonal flow across Canada that has just kept it bottled up there. It just couldn't get down, but now we are starting to see the jet dropping a little bit, and some of this Arctic air is coming, kind of building from Alaska and starting to build around James Bay, and so it's getting a little closer, so that trough kind of taking shape. The jet's getting a little farther south, so I think we may at least see some more normal winter if these models are right. I mean, a lot of times the GFS, but the Euro is showing it too, so I'm a little more impressed. So a lot of times the GFS, 7 days and beyond, tries to start bringing Arctic air down, and then by the time you get there, each day it keeps pushing it off. But now that the European is starting to show that, a little more confidence that we're going to be looking at some cold air close by to get tapped. Which what are?
The Arctic oscillation.
Yeah, okay.
Which would let that go.
Kent?
Yeah, I just got a text from Dave. He said he was making something to eat, and he's asking if you could start over.
Tell him I'll get right on that. So, all right. All right.
Sounds great.
Dave.
Thanks, Dale.
Yep. We got an hook here, guys. Sure.